and welcome back to the channel. I've done a few videos recently on weathering Hornby wagons and Hornby rolling stock. So if you haven't already checked those videos out, please go back to the playlist and check those out. You might find those of interest. And that leads us on to today. Today I'm going to show you a complete run through on how we weather and improve this Hornby wagon, or it's actually a van, I think it is. I picked this up off eBay, very reasonably priced. But with all sort of late Hornby or early Hornby wagons, this probably dates back to maybe the 80s or 90s. They're very basic. There's not much in the way of character to them, to be fair. So what I'm going to do is change it up a bit. I'm going to respray it. I'm going to weather it, renumber it, because it's got I believe a works number on this one. This is a works van, I think. And just change it a bit and see what it comes out like. But I'm going to do it step by step so you can follow along. And if you want to have a go on one of your own, please do. Hopefully you'll find this of help to you. If you do like this sort of content and you want to see some more, just give me a thumbs up and like or comment below. I do try and answer all the comments. And if you do like that, also, if you feel that you want to subscribe, then by all means do, please do. So let's get on with the build. The first thing we're going to do is totally dismantle this, take the wheels off, roof off, and there's a weight in it as well. We'll take the weight out and then we'll just move on from there. So I've popped the roof off and I've popped the wheels out. They just snap out quite easy. They're not very difficult to do. I don't particularly like those wheels that came on this wagon. They look very cheap and not very good at all. You could paint them up and we could easily change that. But I'm going to stick a new set on, I think. I've got some spare wheels somewhere, so I'm going to put a new set on those. So just to demonstrate how easy it is to dismantle these type of wagons, I'll just show you how the bottom pops off this. It's pretty straightforward. If you can just keep that, if I'll just keep that in view for you. So you just gently maneuver it. Gently pull it. It will jump out in a minute. I'm going to assure you. They're quite tricky to do, but they do come out. You've got like lugs underneath here that you can just press and they should come out. They shouldn't give you too much trouble. So just gently pull that, pry it. No, right, it's not going to come out. So I'm going to go and use a little small screwdriver that I've got. I'll be back in a minute. So after a bit of gentle persuasion with the screwdriver, it just does pop off like that. So there's the weight that goes in the wagon as well. So we want to retain that. So we just put that somewhere safe for now. It just drops off the bottom there. So we'll dispose of that over the side, somewhere safe. Now this is the chassis. Now we're going to spray this and paint this and make it look a bit more unplasticky. At the moment it just looks very plastic, and that's what it is. It looks very toyish. So we're going to change that and make it look a little bit extra special and fit in with the rest of the stuff that I've already done. Okay, so we'll put that to the side. The roof, I'm going to probably keep that black, but I'm not going to keep it this black. I'm going to respray it because I think that looks awful. So there's that. The actual truck itself, or the van itself, as you can see, it's very red. I think that might have been a works colour. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not massively up to speed on my train wagons. So I do know that they did these in a British Rail grey, I want to say. So I'm going to spray that grey and then we'll define the detail on it and what have you as we go. So that's it dismantled. Like I said, I'm going to change the wheels and we'll come back. What I'm going to do now is just wash it in warm soapy water to get any horrible bits off of it that may have gathered over time before we apply any paint at all. Okay, so I'll just go away and wash that. So all it is warm soapy water, give it a good scrub with a little toothbrush or something, an old toothbrush or something like that, and it'll come up lovely. And then we'll be back. Okay, so the bits have all been washed and dried. They do take some time to dry. I tend to let them dry naturally and then finish it off with a bit of a hairdryer just to make sure it is completely dry. Now, you do need to make sure it's completely dry before you put the next coat down or whatever you're going to do with it. So what I'm going to do now, you can see there I've also, by the way, I've also put the new wheels there. They're not brand new, but they come off of another. I've cannibalise them off another wagon. These ones are spoked wheels, I think, as well, which look rather nice. So we'll be using those. So the next step that we're going to do is, I think what we'll do is we'll spray the main body of the van in a grey colour, let that dry, and then we'll work on the other parts. In fact, I might do the roof as well, because I think I'm going to paint that a different colour, black or maybe dark grey. Don't know yet. And as for the chassis, what I'm going to do with that, because it's soft plastic, I'm just going to spray it and hit it with a matte varnish just to matte it down, because at the moment there is a slight gleam to it if you look, but that comes with all plasticky bits, I suppose. So I'm going to give that a bit of a matte varnish, so that will take any weathering powders and paints that we put on. And also, in addition, what I've also done, if you can see like the buffer beam, I've taken the mould line off that because it had a bit of a mould seam line on it, so I've taken that off. I've also tried to get them off of the buffers as well, but didn't actually have many on there, but it just makes it look a little bit nicer. Okay, so I'll spray this grey, matte prime that, and paint the roof, and then I'll come back once it's all basic painted. Okay, so I've primed the van and the roof of the van in a grey. The grey I've used for this is just standard Halford's primer. You can get that. I find that's a very good primer, but by all means use whatever one you want if you're going to do this. I've also, as I mentioned, if you look to the left, sorry, you'll see the actual sort of chassis of the van. That's just all I've done with that is coated it in a matte varnish. I've not done anything else with it, because what we're going to do, we're going to paint that a little bit more with some sort of grimy colour later on. So that's just to give it a bit of a base for the paint to adhere to, because it was shiny plastic before. So that's that step so far. I'm now going to go away. I shall paint the roof in a slightly darker grey than the Halford's primer, and then we'll come back and we'll start doing some more work on the van itself, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with the chassis. So I've now sprayed the roof of the van, and as you can see, it is noticeably darker than the actual van itself. So the van, like I said, is Halford's grey primer. The top of the van I've sprayed in Citadel colour, and the colour is Eshin Grey, which I'll just place next to the Panzer Aces colour, which you can see there, which I'm just coming on to. So that's Eshin Grey. You can get that from any sort of paint supplier that you get yours from. I get mine from the Games Workshop shop itself. I'm now going to spray the chassis, and I want to do it in a sort of track grime type colour. Now you can use rail match or whatever colours that you want. I found a very good one for me personally, which I find goes well, and I spray my rails that colour as well, and that is Panzer Aces. This one here. Now if I bring that up to the front a bit more, it's Panzer Aces German Highlight Tank Crew. It's basically a highlight for the black if you're painting Panzer Crews black, if you're into military modelling. But I find it's like a dark brown almost, so it works very well as track grime. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to spray the base of that chassis, and then I'll show you what that looks like, and then we'll continue on from there. So now the chassis has been sprayed. You can see there that it's a sort of dark brown colour, a grimy colour. You can of course use whatever paints you want. You can also use the ones I recommend if you want. It's entirely up to you. So that's all the base coats down. So because we're now going to sort of move on, I suppose, to a little bit of weathering and sort of panel lining as such. If you don't know what panel lining is, there's loads of videos on the internet about that, and I'll show you how, as we go, what we're going to do with that. I use oil washes for mine. I just find them better. I prefer that. And acrylics are a little bit more difficult to do that technique with, but you can do it with them. But I prefer to use oils. So in order to use oils, this is my method, and this is my method. Some people don't do this, but I will now satin varnish anything that I'm going to wash. So that is going to be the roof panel and the body of the van itself. So I'm now going to satin varnish that. You can use gloss varnish, but I prefer satin. Or some people don't use anything at all. However, if you don't use anything at all, you run the risk of the capillary action not working as well. And I'll show you how we do that in the next step. So I'm going to go away now. I'm going to satin varnish that and then bring that back to the bench, and we'll start doing a panel wash on everything. So now they've both had a coat of satin varnish, which you can see here. These are the ones I use. There's lots of different varnishes on the market that you can buy. You can use Vallejo, they do a set. I mean, nearly every company must do one, I'm sure. I, however, use MIG. I think the MIG Ammo ones, for me, I really like them. They do a satin, I think they do a gloss and a matte, but I just use satin and matte for most of my work. Yeah, I can't recommend them thoroughly enough. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. I don't get paid by them, but I'd use them and I like them. I think they do the job really well. So if you're considering using varnishes, why not use them? I can thoroughly recommend them. So the next step that we need to do really before we do the panel lining wash is I need to get some decals on the van. I bought some decals from Fox Transfers, just basic van numbers. I think I brought. I'm going to do them. I don't know a lot about railway markings, I have to say, so I'm just going with pictures that I've seen on the internet and just going from there. They may not be realistic or accurate, but they'll be good enough for me. So if you want to do a bit more research, then please do, but for me, they're going to work. Okay, so I'm going to cut them transfers out and get them on. I'll show you them as we do them, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I've now satin varnished the van and the roof, and the eagle-eyed amongst you will also see that I've also put some decals on there. I've redecaled them. The old markings on the vehicle I didn't like, and plus I was changing the colour of it anyway, so I will just point out the markings that I've done. You can see here, I just put the tonnage marking on and also the running number. I don't know whether that's accurate. I'm not into that. I don't know all that. All I know is that it has to have a running number to operate, and also I'd imagine a tonnage sign for loading capacities, etc. It's probably not hyper accurate, but for me it's okay. It's good. I'm good with that for mine. Yeah, so that's now been satin varnished. So now we're going to go on and do some panel lining, and for that I'm going to mix up a little bit of oil paint, dark oil paint, with some thinners, and really make it watery so that it's almost like a watery consistency, like a wash. And then I'm going to run that in all the panel lines, and if I do have any overspill or anything, I'll have time to clean that up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just film myself doing that so that you can see, and I'll do a bit of a commentary over the top of that. So as you can see here, I've set up the desk for what I'm going to do. I've got these little jam pots that I found. They're little miniature jam pots that you could get at hotels and things. I think I got mine at a hotel when we stayed. I've got one that's just got thinners in it for cleaning my brush, etc. I'm using Winsor & Newton's raw umber. You can use whatever brand you want. I like Winsor & Newton. I think they're quite good. So I'm going to take a small piece of this out of the tube, put it into the jar, the empty jar, and then place some thinners in it, thin it right down to a wash consistency, and then start pin washing. So it's pretty straightforward. So I'm just taking the lid off the paint off camera. I've also got a little stirring stick that I use, like it's a coffee stick that I just use for taking little bits of paint off the tube. So it's very simple. Just take a small amount of oil paint. See, it's not much there at all really. Put that into the jar. lid back on the oil paint. Then I use a pipette, which I have. Everything I use for my oil-based paints, I just use for oil-based paints. Don't use it for anything else, because they basically wreck your brushes. So I don't go around using your nice Kolinsky sable brushes for this, because it's going to ruin it. So I take a small amount of thinners into the pipette, squeeze that into the jar, and then I mix it in there until it's all mixed in. You can probably see that. It's pretty straightforward. If it will make like a wash consistency. So I'm going to continue doing that, and then I'll come back once I've mixed it up. Okay, so I've mixed that up to a consistency that I like. There's no real sort of ratio that I use. I just do it by eye, and the more you do it, the more you'll become familiar with what's good. You should just tap it on the glass. It should just run down the glass like it's doing there, if you can see that. You probably can't see it. Let me just move into a better position here. So just tap it on the glass and it should run down like that. And that gives you a wash consistency. Okay, so I'm not going to use this big brush, which I've used for mixing, because that would be far too big and bulky for the detail that we need. So I'm going to put that to the side for now. I've got an old brush that I use. This one is an old army painter one, I think, regiment brush, I think. So what I do is I shape the end of the brush just to get it to a point as much as I can. Don't forget these are rather damaged brushes now, because I've used them a lot for doing this sort of work with oils, so that it does wreck the brushes. So you just get a tiny amount on your brush, load your brush up with it, get some of the excess off on the edge, and then you literally take this, and I'll show you on these lines because it'd be easier to see it. So I'm going to do the rivets in the center there, across there. So you get a bit on your brush, tap it off, and then just literally touch it to the rivets, and you watch it all go like capillary action all along it. It should do anyway. Yep, there we go. And don't worry if it goes too much. Like you could literally just slap this on if you wanted, because you're going to slightly take it off anyway afterwards, and I'll show you how I do that. And that's the beauty about oils, is you can use them, and if you don't quite get it right, you can just wipe it off, because it takes forever to set, or it takes a while to set. So I want to bring out all this rivet detail all around this vent and along these edges. We get it all in there, because dirt would have got all in there, and I'll just take the rest of it off as we go in a little while. So go around all these edges. See, that may look like I'm putting lots on there, but that will soon go when we wipe it off. And you want to get all this detail nice and highlighted, because that's where all the grime would go. So if you just tap it on there, and see how it runs, that's what you're looking for. Okay, I'm going to carry on doing this, just this back end, then I'll come back and I'll show you what I'm going to do to take it off. So I've completely done that side, just washed it completely. I really haven't taken much care now I've done that, if I'm honest. I've just slapped it all on, because it's a dirty railway carriage. I haven't done the rest yet, but I'm going to do it afterwards. So we now don't want to leave it like that, because it would just look a bit messy. So I want to take most of that off now, but just leave it in all the sort of like lines in the indents around all that riveting work and around that vent thing at the top. So in order to do that, what I normally do is I let this dry a little bit. You can leave it to dry for pretty much hours if you want. It's still going to be workable. I wouldn't leave it 2 or 3 days, because it might set by then, but certainly you've got hours to play with this. So me being impatient, I'm going to do it now. So I use cotton buds, and I use my old brush, which I'm going to moisten in the white spirit or odorless spirit, if you use whatever you use. So I'm going to do that and then I'm just going to gently take it off where I don't want it. So across here, for example, on that vent plate, that's going to come off because it wouldn't be quite as dirty. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it down in a downwards motion, because rain falls naturally down and it runs down the sides of the wagon. So it'll give you a very subtle streaking effect if you do that. Just do it like that. So I'm going to use the cotton bud at first. You can either moisten these or use them as they come. So if I just show you how I do that, I just gently stroke it down. And if you look on there now, it's taken most of it off, but you can also see a very subtle, I don't know if you can see that, a very subtle streaking effect. Now you can go to town on this streaking effect. You can buy products from different companies like AK Interactive and stuff like that. And they do purpose-made streaking grime and stuff like that, which is excellent. I've used it as well on various different projects that I've used. But you can use oils as well. I like oils. I think they're great. I think they're very versatile. And that's what I'm going to use on this. So again, it's just like, get the brush, dip it in the spirit, let it run off, dab it on a piece of tissue paper. I'm doing that off camera, just to take the excess of the spirit away off the brush. So the brush is just damp with white spirit. If you look at my thumb, you can't see it coming off, and that's how you want it. It is there, but it's just a very, very, very moist, damp brush. Hardly any spirit on it at all. And then what you can do is you can come in and you watch the top of this over there. I'll take all that off. See how it takes that off? Making it nice and clean, so you can be as messy as you want. Now I am going to leave it around the rivets, so I'm going to go in between the rivets very carefully. But all that up there I'm going to take off. And then if you get a lot of paint on your brush, just wipe it off on a piece of tissue and start the process again. So I'm going to go and do that. You kind of get the idea from that. And then I'll come back and I'll show you what this end panel looks like once I've wiped it all off. So there's that end of the van completely done. I've removed as much of that oil wash as I felt necessary. You can leave it as dirty or as clean as you like. Don't forget these wagons got filthy. So you can just see on that corner there the difference. I haven't actually done that side yet, but you can just see there's the corner there where it's just lapped over. You can see the difference between the two shades, and that effect is kind of highlighting and bringing out all this detail, which is what it's supposed to do. So now I'm going to continue with the remainder of the van on these sides, and then when I come back I'll show you what it looks like completely panel washed, and that's the first step of weathering. So all my weathering has now been done on this van. If I just bring that forward for you to have a closer look at it, you can see all the panel lines are now really, really apparent. You can see them, they're standing out and they're popped out a little bit. That's the kind of look I was looking for. You can also see some of there, you can see this little bit of streaking effect going on around the door handles. You can make that as heavy or as light as you want. I'm going to be doing a further bit of streaking in the next step, which is using weathering powders on this to do it, and then we'll varnish it and finish it off. But from the panel lining point of view, that's that done. So if you have a look around there, you can also see I've put the decals on. I've redecaled this. Not from the, like I said, I don't know whether it's accurate or not, but it's good enough for me. So that's that. The roof's also been done in a similar fashion. Tried to keep the dirt and dust and streaking effect sort of from the top going down, so it looks like it's gathered dirt and dust. And other than the basic paint coat on that, nothing else has been done. But we're going to do the rest of that with weathering powders. But in order to do that, I'm going to reassemble the model now. So I'll come back when it's reassembled and then we're ready to go with the weathering powders. Okay, so the van's now been reassembled. I've put the wheels on and the chassis on, and as you can see, that's what it looks like finished, or finished so far. So we're going to enhance it a little bit more weathering. Of course, you could do chipping techniques and everything if you wanted, but I'm not going to on this vehicle. I'm just going to show you a very light weathering with these two pigment powders that I've got by the side here. You'll see they're both AK Interactive products, but there's lots and lots of other different products on the market. I'm not sponsored in any way, shape or form by anyone. So I've got a variety, but this happens to be these two that I'll be using today. And we'll get some powder on it, particularly on the chassis bottom bit. And we'll see how it looks then. I'm just gonna grab some brushes, then I'll come back and I'll show you how I do it. As you can see, I've got some tissue down, or some kitchen roll down, couldn't think what it was called, kitchen roll down, just so that we can keep it off of our workbench, because these pigments they can get messy. So I'll just grab some brushes and I'll be back. Okay, so I'm just going to use these two brushes today. They're fairly fine. One's a bit bigger than the other. You can see one's an old Citadel brush that I use, a detail brush, and that one is just an average brush that I found in my collection. You can see what it is there. It's not anything particularly brilliant. I tend not to use excellent brushes on this because, again, a bit like when you use oils, it's going to ruin them after a while. So don't use your best Kolinsky brushes, whatever you do. Okay, so let's crack open some of this pigment and start getting it on the actual model itself. So first of all, I'm going to use the burnt umber, which is just here. So I'm going to take some of that out, put it on the brush, and then I'm going to start applying it to the model. I'm going to do it all in real time. I'm just going to take this off camera so you can't see it for a minute. But what the idea is this is going to simulate further grime and dust that are kicked up by the railway and whatnot. Now, you don't really need an awful lot of this. A little goes a long way, and it's better to put too little on than too much. So what I'm going to do now is, on the lower part here, I'm just going to put a little bit of this raw umber on there. Burnt umber, I think it's called, is it? Burnt umber, just on here, just so it simulates dust and rail grime and whatnot. So you can apply it, just tap it all on however you want really, and then just spread it about with a brush, and just so it gives it that kind of like dusty effect. You can see it's already given it a slight different colour variation to what it was, and that's the kind of idea you're looking for. I'm also going to spread that up so that it drifts up just onto the very, very lower part of the wagon. Again, less is more in this instance, because you don't want to overpower it and make it look disgustingly dirty, unless that's your preference, of course, but it's not mine. So I'm just going to put a little bit on there and drift that up there and drift it onto the top. Okay, just a little tiny bit, not too much. Oops, sorry, you couldn't see that. Just a little bit there like that. Just so that it gives the effect of dirt and dust coming up onto the lower, very lower parts of the van itself. Now I'm going to go all that round the whole of the chassis, so it makes it look dirty and grimy, and then I'm going to come back and do a little bit more on the black. So I've gone around all the van now with all of the pigment, so that it's got a sort of nice coat all the way around the vehicle, so that it looks like mud or dust and dirt has drifted up to the lower parts of the van. Okay, you can see that all the way around, and it's the same on the other side. If I just flip that around for you, you can see it's exactly the same. Try not to touch the pigments once you put them on, because you could leave fingerprints and it'll look really, really horrible and spoil your work. So that's that done so far. You can go to town on this if you want, or you can leave it subtle. I like a slight subtler approach. I think less is more, I think, but everybody each to their own. I'm now going to do a couple of little streaks using some powders, and I use the smaller brush that I showed you earlier, the little detail brush, the older detail brush by Citadel that I've got. I'm going to put that into the pigment, get a little tiny bit of pigment on the end of that brush, because it's a smaller brush. you can do a lot more detailed work with it. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. You can see that there's like a bracket there. Now, the rain and dirt would have probably washed down that, so I'm going to just do that from that edge. Just gently feather it down. You can almost hardly see it, but it is there. You just work it down until you're happy with the streaking effect that you get. You could also use other products like AK, I think, do streaking effects and dirt and grime and stuff. You can use whatever you want, but I'm just going to use powders on this because I just think it's easier. After we've done that, I'm going to do a few more. I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like, and then we'll varnish it, seal it all off, and then it'll be done. All right. So the thing with varnishing, sometimes it does dull down the powders a bit, so you can afford to put them on a bit thicker if you want. I'm going to do a little bit of rust. Now the rust, I've got some pastels, some chalk pastels that I've bought years ago in various rust colours. You can get pigments as well in rust colours, but I've got the pastels, so I'm going to use that. All I do with that is I scrape it with the edge of my scalpel until it scrapes it off into a little dish, into a powdery dish, so it looks like the pigments. Then I use it from that. In fact, I will show you that, so I'll just come back after I've got the powder. So you can see there, I have scratched some of the soft pastel into the tray ready for use. It needs to be quite fine. You need to grind it down quite fine, but using the edge of a scalpel should do that, just doing a lot of whittling effect. You can see there I use this one. It's an old one. I don't know if you could still get these in art shops, which is where I got this from years ago. It was a little pack that was in oranges and browns. That's a Dahlia and Rowney. I think you can get lots of different other makes as well, but I've used these. They're very good. I've got a selection of chalks and pastels that I use for that instead of commercially buying the pigments. But I also do commercially buy them, so it's whatever you choose to do. It's equal. The choice is yours. There's no right or wrong way. Incidentally, those pastels will last you probably a lifetime. I've had mine years, and there's still loads left on it. So all I'm going to do now is take some of this and put it around areas where it would be rusty on the actual vehicle. So in this instance, if we look around here, I'm going to put some on the axle boxes, which would probably get a little bit of rust on them. And I might do a couple of streaking effects as well on there, what have you. If you're not sure, look at reference pictures. I tend to go how I think it looks good. I don't always go for reference pictures, but I do sometimes. But it's entirely up to you. Again, it's whatever you think's good. Okay, so I'm going to add some rust streaks in there. Come back, show you what it is, then probably we'll wrap this up and I'll just finish it off with a matte varnish to seal everything in, and then the thing's done. And there we have it. The completed wagon, fully weathered, using oils and powders. It's now had a coat of varnish on it and it is completely dry. That should protect it now from just basic handling if you're putting it on and off your railway. And there it is. So if you fancy having a go, please do. It's not difficult, to be fair. It's just practice. If you've never done it before, I thoroughly recommend you giving it a go. As always, thanks very much for watching. If you do like the videos, please consider subscribing. It doesn't cost anything, and it just helps my algorithms on the channel. And a thumbs up, and any comments you have or any questions, drop them below. I always look at them and I always reply to them. So thanks again, and I'll see you all soon.